All right, we are back here on SportsLine. Phone lines wide open, 737-7767. Titans going to the NFL Combine. John Robinson, Mike Mularkey up there. You got the Predators battling for a playoff spot down the stretch. We hit on both those topics in the first segment. A couple other things out there. Kevin Punter, leading scorer for the Vols, 11th leading scorer in the country, 22.2 points per game. Probably out again after missing Saturday's game against LSU. Should miss another game Wednesday night at South Carolina, and maybe more with a stress fracture in his foot. That is a very difficult blow for Rick Barnes and that Tennessee team. Meanwhile, the Lady Vols, out of the AP Top 25 for the first time since February 17th, 1985 today. Think about that. 31 years that they were in the top 25 every week. That is a record span of 565 weeks. 565 weeks in a row in the top 25, which is just simply incredible. So congratulations to the dominant history of that program. And some of the other numbers that are amazing about that, 103 of those weeks were at #1 in the country. And I think, amazingly, the more impressive number than that is that of the 565 consecutive weeks, 506 of them were in the top 10. So it's not like they were just sneaking in up until these last couple of weeks, really. They were an elite, dominant program throughout, which could be part of the problem for Holly Warlick. A lot of rumors about her and her future there on Rocky Top. What is her future there on Rocky Top at the moment? Because this is a program that had been in the top 25 and top 10 for most of it for the last 31 years. Won 8 national championships, and here you are right now not in that position. That's got to be frustrating for Lady Vol fans for sure. And then one other basketball note, Vanderbilt, of course. Big week this week. The Commodores squarely on the bubble. Kevin Stallings may also have his own hot seat issues at the end of the season if he can't get this team into the NCAA tournament. But a big week for the Doors right now. At Florida tomorrow night, Kentucky at home on Saturday. Those are the types of wins that can really boost your resume late in the season. And look, as frustrating as it's been, Vandy fan, and it has been frustrating. They have been a huge disappointment. In my mind, the biggest disappointment in the country to this point of the season. You're judged by what you do in March. And that's what happens in college basketball. If you get into the tournaments and then what you do there determines how your season is viewed. And for everything that's happened and all the frustration at this point, Vanderbilt is still alive. They are still very much on the bubble with a chance to get into the NCAA tournaments, and a team that if they get there and play up to the expectations we've all created for them, if that's possible, they got a chance to maybe do some damage once they get there. We'll find out. 737-7767 is our number. Several lines open for you. Let's begin tonight with Hiram. Hiram, good evening. You're first up on SportsLine.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking my call.
You bet.
I got a Predators question for you.
Sure.
Next week, WWE is going to be in town, and this week, Karen Andrews is in town, and she dates L.A. King. They ought to make a match. The first family in Nashville, Predators, Mike and Kerry fight them next week at Raw, and maybe that'll bring up for the Predators to get in the playoffs. Go Blackhawks. Thanks.
All right, thank you. That would be interesting for sure. And I don't know if the Predators need any more fights. We've seen a couple from those guys in the last week. They definitely understand where they're at in the standings and that they need some fight and some passion down the stretch of the season. We've seen some of that here lately. Frankly, the Preds have played pretty well ever since that Western Canada road trip before the All-Star break. Their issue, again, are the overtime games. These overtime games and late game issues. You know, St. Louis got a very late goal the first game back from the All-Star break. Tampa got a very late goal to force overtime about a week or so ago in one of the games that the Preds lost in overtime. And then all these overtime games. Just giving away points, giving away opportunities to move yourself up in the standings. You cannot do that when you are in a playoff race. And as well as the Preds have played, they haven't been able to really cash in with the points in the standings. Got to be better than that down the stretch. Let's go to David. David, good evening.
Hey, Steve, how you doing? Hey, got two questions for you. One is, Tennessee sells out every year in basketball, as far as women basketball. Vanderbilt's women were lucky to get a half of it filled at times. The only time we sell out is if Tennessee comes in, if Kentucky comes in, stuff like that. But, hey, I can't remember when the last year that you can combine when the ladies really sold out Memorial Gym. And I'll hang up and listen to the answer. Thank you.
Well, it certainly goes back a ways, for sure. I don't know if you can find it in the Melanie Balcom era. So I think you go back before into some of the 90s teams with Vanderbilt when maybe it was a bigger deal. But I think one of the things, obviously, they're not an elite program right now. They're not a team headed to the NCAA tournament this year, barring something crazy down the stretch. So you're not talking about an elite program. That's part of the issue here, no question about it. But the other thing that I think hurts the Vandy women's basketball program, like it's hurt a lot of other things here, is in its heyday, when they really packed them into Memorial Gym, there wasn't as much else to do in the city of Nashville. I mean, even when you look at the Vandy men's side of things, Saturday against Georgia, two teams fighting to get off the bubble, give themselves a shot at getting into the NCAA tournament come March. So that's a pretty big basketball game, right? SEC game. You looked at the lower sections there at Memorial Gym, there were tons of empty seats on Saturday. Now, it wasn't a terrible crowd. It wasn't a terrible crowd, but there were still a lot of seats to be had. Why is that? I think a big part of it is there's just so much else to do around here. And we all know when it comes to Vanderbilt, the school itself, as great as it is, isn't very big. You're only talking about, 7,000 to 8,000 undergrads? And so when you think about that and the international vibe of the campus and certainly national vibe, how great the school is that it draws in people from everywhere, it's not like everyone who graduates from Vanderbilt moves down the street or goes to Williamson County or something like that. These people move off to New York City and L.A. and abroad and all sorts of things. So your alumni base is not all in Nashville. So it's always a difficult thing for Vanderbilt sports to draw at the same levels that some of your other public schools with larger alumni bases and frankly probably more local alumni bases have. But I think the other factor there is since those glory days, so to speak, Nashville's become a major league sports city. We've got the Titans. We've got the Predators. Those are big draws. I mean, think about it. The Predators pretty much every night put 17,311 into Bridgestone Arena. Sellout. Just about every night they've got that. Maybe a couple hundred people less, but there are very few 14,000 people games at Bridgestone Arena. That's how well they draw all the time. 41 games a year. That's different. I think that hurts Vanderbilt men. I think it hurts Middle Tennessee. I think it hurts Belmont. I think it hurts all those people. Vanderbilt women, certainly. If you're playing a game on a Tuesday night and the Predators are at home, you're probably not the number one game in town. Not the number one sporting attraction in town that night. Same thing on a Saturday night. Because of the location, you got the Broadway aspect to it. You can really make it a night that's different than what all the college venues can provide. And you just spread out the fan base a whole lot more. I mean, Vandy fan isn't necessarily a Belmont fan. Belmont fan isn't necessarily a Lipscomb fan. Women's basketball fan isn't necessarily a men's basketball fan or vice versa. But most of the city that at least gives any darn about hockey cares about the Predators because they're Nashville's team. And so I think you also don't have the splintering effect there as well. So there's just a lot going on now, and so the bottom line is if you want crowds, you better be good. You better give people a reason to show up and be a part of what you're doing. Phone line still open, 737-7767. We can get you more of your phone calls if we want. The NFL Combine kicking off on Wednesday in Indianapolis. New Titans general manager John Robinson will be there. New head coach, at least permanent head coach, Mike Mularkey will be there. Several other position coaches will be there as well. Coming up next, we'll have my sit-down interview with John Robinson about, since he's taken over, his reaction to being the general manager of the Titans, and his plan for building this thing moving forward. We'll get to that coming up next. Stay tuned. This is SportsLine on News Channel 5+.